good afternoon, and welcome to this telephone town hall with Congressman Chris Pappas and Congresswoman Annie Kuster. We'll be discussing the federal and state response to the coronavirus. Now, during this call, please press star 3 if you'd like to ask a question. We'll also be joined by Dr. Michael Calderwood, the Associate Chief Quality Officer at Dartmouth-Hitchcock. He's an epidemiologist and infectious disease expert. On the call also, we'll be hearing from Kevin McKeon, the IRS District Congressional Liaison, who will provide an update about economic impact payments to families and individuals. My name is Dirk, and I'll be moderating today's call. This event is an interactive forum, and we'll be taking questions from you about this developing situation. If you have a question, again, all you need to do is press star 3 on your telephone keypad, and you'll be placed in line to speak with a member of our staff. They'll take down your name and where you're calling from. Then the next time you hear your name, you will be live on the call and able to ask your question directly. Again, if you have a question you want to ask, please press star 3 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. At this time, I would like to introduce Congresswoman Kuster for opening remarks. Congresswoman, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for today's telephone town hall. As this COVID-19 crisis has developed and we've been responding here in New Hampshire, Congressman Chris Pappas and I have held a series of telephone town hall meetings. This is the 5th telephone town hall related to the COVID-19 pandemic, and I'm so grateful to hear from all of you. Your questions have been incredibly helpful to us as we work to advocate for New Hampshire priorities here in Congress. I wanted to relate that we've been having conference calls throughout the state. We talk on a regular basis with the hospitals and the healthcare providers, the community health centers, the home health centers, the nursing homes. We're talking with small businesses and bankers, and we'll get in more about those programs that came from the third comprehensive package that Congress had passed in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, known as the CARES Act. You may recall on March 27th, Chris and I traveled down to Washington to vote on that. And it's a bipartisan package. It's the largest economic stimulus package in the history of the country. And that bill included direct cash payments to American workers and families in an effort to keep up with regular expenses like rent and groceries during these challenging economic times. These payments, the direct payments, are scheduled to begin next week, and I'm delighted that we have a representative from the IRS here. We have been urging the Treasury to get these funds out the door as quickly as possible, and he can give us more information on that today. For workers who've been laid off or furloughed from their job, the CARES Act includes an additional $600 per week supplement for workers' compensation. That's an emergency supplement for the next 4 months through the end of July 31st. And over the past few weeks, we've seen a dramatic rise of 3,000% in unemployment claims here in New Hampshire. If you are in need of unemployment assistance, please visit today, nhes.nh.gov. That's the Department of Employment Security, and you can file your application for unemployment. The CARES Act also included over $350 billion in funds for small businesses and nonprofits, and bolstered unemployment insurance for workers who are out of a job, and allocated $100 billion to hospitals to support their frontline work caring for COVID-19 patients. We've been working very closely with the Small Business Administration and our local community banks on implementation of the Paycheck Protection Program. And as of last night, we've seen thousands of loan applications here in New Hampshire. If you are a small business that needs economic relief due to the closing of your business or fewer customers during this economic downturn, You can use this program to maintain your staff and keep up with your basic costs like rent and utilities. And I encourage anybody who's interested in this program to contact your local bank or visit sba.gov for more information. So as we continue to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, we're urging congressional leaders to provide additional funding to the Paycheck Protection Program to support small businesses and nonprofits. We're asking for additional funding for rural hospitals and for hospitals here in the Granite State, and to ensure that our small communities can receive appropriate reimbursement for costs incurred during this health crisis. So Chris and I have just gotten off the phone with Vice President Pence and Director Anthony Fauci of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, and some of our House colleagues. We're receiving an update from the White House Coronavirus Task Force. During the call, we heard about efforts to shore up the supply chains for personal protective equipment, that's the gowns and the gloves and the masks for our frontline healthcare workers, and for ventilators. And we've received an update on current modeling projections for some of the COVID-19 hotspots throughout the country. I certainly appreciate the work that's being done by the task force, as well as by state and local leaders, including the governor here in New Hampshire. So today, I'm very pleased that we're once again joined by Dr. Michael Calderwood, Dartmouth-Hitchcock epidemiologist and infectious disease expert, to respond to any questions you may have about COVID-19 and the progression of the epidemic through New Hampshire, as well as Kevin McKean from the Internal Revenue Service, who is here to dive into the details about the direct payments to Granite Staters. I so appreciate you taking the time out of your days to participate in our telephone town hall. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Congressman Pappas for his remarks.
Thank you very much, Annie, for your remarks and your work for the people of your district. And I'm pleased to be able to join you all on this call again today to answer questions and to talk a little bit about what we've seen to date with the federal response and how we can work together to make it better. You know, I'm very appreciative that Kevin McKean from IRS is here to help explain these payments that are going to be made to individuals. Our offices have been fielding a number of questions about them in terms of timing, what your earnings had to have been last year to get one of these checks, how you can make sure the IRS has the relevant information so that you get them in a timely fashion. And so we look forward to hearing some more from him. And as always, we appreciate having a healthcare expert and an epidemiologist on the call. Dr. Calderwood has joined us before, and we really look forward to continuing to draw on his expertise to help us understand what's happening all around us so we can best protect ourselves and those all around us and our families and in our communities. I just want to wish everyone of the Jewish faith who is celebrating the first night of Passover tonight a happy Passover. I also know that this is Holy Week, and so for those of the Christian faith, I wish you a mindful Holy Week and in advance a happy Easter coming up this Sunday. Obviously, as our lives have been turned upside down by this pandemic, we all need to look within ourselves and continue to connect with one another and try to uphold those traditions that we hold dear that are such a fundamental part of who we are. So I do hope everyone has a very mindful celebration this week who is celebrating. I'll say that we need to continue to monitor how the CARES Act is being implemented. Additional legislation is going to be needed to make sure that people can get back up on their feet once this is over and that our economy and our society can get back to normal. So we'll continue to advocate for those priorities that are important to New Hampshire. What was passed in the CARES Act is really a bridge loan to the people of New Hampshire, to our hospitals, to our working families, to our small businesses so that they can weather this storm. As Congresswoman Kuster referenced, those filing for unemployment are receiving enhanced benefits. We have seen more than 100,000 individuals in New Hampshire file unemployment claims over the past 3 weeks. That is by far a record number and represents a significant portion of our society. And I know many more are intending to do so and are waiting on the line or trying to get through online to file those claims, please keep trying and let us know how we can assist you in that process. In addition, some of the programs through the Small Business Administration have been slower to roll out than Congress intended and that we would have hoped. We really want to get this urgent help out to our business community so that they can weather this storm. The Paycheck Protection Program, as well as the Economic Injury Disaster Loans, are really important provisions of the CARES Act, but we're hearing stories from New Hampshire businesses that they're having a hard time getting their applications in, that New Hampshire lenders, our banks and credit unions, aren't getting all the details about these programs that they need from the Small Business Administration. So we need to continue to demand better and continue to demand swift action for our New Hampshire small businesses so that they can get this support. We're going to continue to look at increasing the amount of money that is in these programs. We feel that the $350 billion was a very significant early start, but that these programs will quickly become oversubscribed. And I think on both sides of the aisle, folks in Washington agree that more needs to be done to support our small businesses. And we'll be back at that with a fourth bill very soon. So to all of those who are on the call, we thank you for your efforts. We've been hearing some glimmers of hope of late in the news in terms of what new infections look like, and in terms of some of the numbers. We are clearly not out of the woods yet, but it is important to see that the extreme measures that we've all been taking, the social distancing, the sheltering at home, is beginning to make a difference. And in the final analysis, we are literally going to have saved hundreds of thousands of lives of our fellow Americans by staying at home, by taking care of ourselves, and by preventing others from becoming sick. So that is really a crucial piece of this puzzle. We can't let up now, and we all have to keep doing what we've been doing. I know Dr. Calderwood will get into this in terms of a new recommendation from the CDC that we all wear cloth masks or face coverings while in certain public settings. And that's critically important, especially in those places like the grocery store or the pharmacy, where it sometimes is difficult to stay 6 feet away from everyone else. This could be an important measure, not only to protect ourselves, but certainly to protect others, especially as so many who have COVID-19 are showing symptoms and may not know their status. So with that, why don't I turn things over to Dr. Calderwood, who can make some opening comments, and then we'll turn it over after that to Kevin McKeon from the IRS. Dr. Calderwood?
Thank you. So I wanted to start off with some of the numbers. I think many are looking at these on a regular basis. We are approaching 1.5 million cases around the world of COVID-19, now over 85,000 confirmed deaths. And in the U.S., we just passed today 400,000 confirmed cases with over 13,000 deaths. Somewhat encouraging, though, is a suggestion that the curve may be flattening, at least for new cases, and the hope is that the number of deaths will soon follow suit. If we focus on New Hampshire, we've had up close to 750 confirmed cases and 13 deaths, and the current projections are that our state will peak somewhere between late May and early July, and I think that somewhere in June is a reasonable estimate for that. I will mention that there are some more optimistic models out there suggesting an earlier peak in April, and well, I would love for that to be the case, and we'd definitely smile if it were the case. I think that's probably more likely for areas of the country where they're already in the middle of their surge compared to states like New Hampshire, where we're earlier on in the course. I will mention a few things in terms of encouraging news, however. The first is if we were to maintain a 40% or higher reduction in social contact, and a number of the things that have been put into place are getting us to that number, then we actually should be okay in terms of not exceeding hospital capacity in terms of our number of beds, our number of ICUs, or our number of ventilators. And all the hospitals have really built surge plans to make sure that is the case. And the second is particularly looking at our state numbers and the numbers for northern New England. In the past 1 to 2 weeks, we are seeing evidence of a flattening of the curve, and the doubling time for cases has gone from a doubling every 4 days to a doubling every 6 days. And that makes a big difference in terms of the ultimate projection in how many cases we expect, how many deaths we expect. And so while we understand it's quite difficult, everything that's been put into place, it really is making a difference. And I finally want to just really give a thank you to those in the community who have stepped forward. We've had a lot of assistance with production of masks and face shields and respirators and other supplies that we need to be able to protect those on the front line caring for patients. And it's really been quite impressive and quite heartwarming to see everyone who is stepping forward to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Calderwood. And we're very fortunate that our next expert was able to make some time to join us for part of this call. Mr. Kevin McKeon, the IRS District Congressional Liaison. Go ahead, sir, with your opening remarks, please.
Oh, thank you very much for having me on, because we're really trying to get the word out about the stimulus payments, or what we call the economic impact payments. And basically, IRS is going to begin distribution of those payments over the next 2 weeks, and there's no action required for most people. So that's a good thing. And the people who are eligible for the economic impact payments, okay, I'm going to run down a quick list, and that would be tax filers with an adjusted gross income of up to $75,000 for individuals and up to $150,000 for married couples filing joint returns. Those folks will receive the full payment. For filers with income above those amounts, the payment is reduced by $5 for each $100 above the $75,000 / $150,000 thresholds. Single filers with income exceeding $99,000 and $198,000 for joint filers with no children, those folks are not eligible. Social Security recipients and railroad retirees who are otherwise not required to file a return are also eligible, and they will not be required to file a return. Okay, and eligible taxpayers who filed returns for either 2019 or 2018 will automatically receive an economic payment of up to $1,200 for individuals or $2,400 for married couples, and up to $500 for each qualifying child. So, like I said before, the vast majority of people don't need to take any action. IRS is going to go ahead and calculate out and automatically send the economic impact payments to those eligible. For folks who've already filed their 2019 tax returns, IRS will use this information to calculate their payment amount. If they haven't yet filed for 2019, IRS will use the information from their 2018 tax filing to calculate the payment. And we're going to go ahead and deposit the payment directly into the same bank account that was on the return filed. Now, if IRS does not have the taxpayer's direct deposit information, we're developing a portal on the Internet where individuals can provide their banking information to the IRS online so that individuals can receive payments immediately as opposed to waiting for a check to come in the mail. If you're not typically required to file a return, like many Social Security recipients and railroad retirees, they're not going to have to do anything special. We'll have the information from their Form FSA 1099 or Railroad Board 1099 to generate the payments, and we'll just send out those payments. There are some people, for example, on SSI or maybe veterans compensation. We're putting together a very simple tax return, probably online, that they'll be able to give us some basic information so we can get the payments out to them. So if you haven't yet filed a return for 2018 or 2019, go ahead and file as soon as you can. We can go to the IRS website. We have the free file program or e-file, and choose direct deposit. So that's a great way to get in there. For those concerned about visiting a tax professional or local community organization in person to get help with a tax return, just be advised that the economic impact payments will be available through the rest of 2020. So if you can't get in right away because of COVID-19 closures, you'll be able to get it later on. And the best place to get information is the IRS.gov website. We have a section on the economic impact payments, and we keep updating it as time goes on. And just, like anything new, beware of scams. We've got information there about there's probably already people out there, trying to, do a scam on somebody about these payments. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McKeon, for that very helpful information. Again, this is a live telephone town hall. If you have a question you would like to ask, please press *3 on your telephone keypad. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and get into some questions now. We've got Latha on the line. Go ahead, Latha. You're live on this call. What is your question?
Good afternoon, Congresswoman Custer and Congressman Pappas. Thank you for all your hard work. My question is, I am totally frustrated with trying to get the PPEs for our hospitals and the first responders and, frontline. I'm part of a group making face masks with HEPA filter inserts, and when a Army Reserve Battalion deployed to go for COVID-19 field hospital requests masks made by our masketeers. That tells volumes. And that is real gridlock, or at least a bottleneck at the state level. I have worked diligently through EOC to get the PPEs for the hospitals. Our doctors, CMOs are saying our doctors might need to resort to wearing garbage bags for gowns. Please tell me, what do I say to my constituents and my frontline workers in my community?
Great. Well, thank you, Latha. I appreciate everything that you're doing, and you're emblematic of a community response that's just been extraordinary all around the state. This has been an issue from the very beginning that we've been talking about with the hospitals weekly and with the nursing homes and our frontline healthcare workers, home care, and community health centers. And it's a major frustration. Let me just say, I won't get political on this call, but we do need to look back when we come out of this as to the major failures in preparedness for the pandemic, and in particular with regard to personal protective equipment for our frontline healthcare workers. I will say that I'm distressed to learn from the state this week that 26%, 1 in 4 positive tests here in New Hampshire is a healthcare worker, and that's simply not fair given what we've been asking of them. So we've been working very closely behind the scenes with the governor. I'm actually working with a New Hampshire entrepreneur right now trying to get a plane down to Honduras to deliver masks back to us. We have 150 New Hampshire companies that have stepped up to produce PPE here in New Hampshire, everything from gowns to masks to hockey equipment companies that are now making the shields for face protection. And as you pointed out, we've got an amazing network of volunteers across the state creating homemade masks of various materials. The call with the Vice President talking about the task force and the military people that are now in charge of distribution of materials is on the one sense promising in that finally, after a lengthy delay, we do have a coordinated effort at the federal level. But what I'm most concerned about is that they indicated on the call that those materials would be distributed to the hot spots, in particular, obviously the focus right now on New York and New Jersey, but down the road we are expecting similar problems in Detroit, Atlanta, Chicago. Boston is on the list, so that materials will be coming to Boston, and that may free up some materials coming here. But I don't think New Hampshire will ever be on that list. And so as of several weeks ago, the governor was taking the position that we had gotten everything we could from the federal stockpile, but that we really needed to start to pull together these materials here in New Hampshire. And I'd be happy to follow up with you offline to make sure we're working through the Hospital Association that does the distribution of those materials with the state. Half of the materials go to the hospitals and half go to nursing homes and home health and other providers. So I'll follow up with you offline, Latha, but thank you. It's a really important question, and it's something that we're working on 24/7.
Our next question comes from Louise from Nashua. Louise, go ahead with your question, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you, representatives and Dr. Calderwood, for having these conferences. They're really important for the public to know. My question is to the doctor. I'm an ex-smoker. I am 70 years old, and I live in Nashua. And I'd like to know how likely I may be to get this virus. I do stay inside except to go to food shopping, but I'm a little worried now. As you can tell, I'm kind of upset, so I will end it here. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much for your question, and it is something that many are concerned about. Obviously, as we get older, our risk of complications from this virus increases, and those who have underlying lung issues from smoking or otherwise are also at higher risk. It does sound like you're doing many of the things that you can do to help protect yourself, which is to try and avoid large crowds, to only go out when absolutely necessary. As we know, this past Friday, there was a recommendation that was coming out from the CDC around the public wearing cloth face coverings when in public settings where social distancing is difficult to maintain, and that often is in situations such as going out to grocery stores. We all need to eat. What I would say is one thing we can do for our neighbors is if you have individuals who are more susceptible, either because of age or chronic illness, thinking how you might step forward and do some shopping for them is one thing we can do to protect others. The cloth face coverings were recommended. I will say the science on their use is mixed. I don't think there's much harm in them, but they are not going to be the perfect solution. We still need to make sure that we are maintaining social distancing with these cloth face coverings. There is now also a recommendation that came out from the New Hampshire Department of Public Health Services around the same time, commenting on visitors and staff entering healthcare facilities also being masked to help prevent transmission during the asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic phases of viral infection. So all hospitals have kind of moved to implement policies around that.
Thank you, Dr. Calderwood. Next on the line, we've got Anne from Manchester, and she's got the homeless population on her mind. Go ahead with your question, please. Hello, Anne. Anne, are you there? We might have lost Anne. We'll try and get her back on the call. So next, Amelia in Lebanon. Got a question? What is it? Please ask it. You're live.
Hello. I'm asking, is it true that losing your sense of smell, is it really a sign of COVID-19?
This is Dr. Calderwood, and that's an excellent question. And it does appear that one of the symptoms is the loss of smell. There are many reasons why one can lose smell, and many viral illnesses can have that as a symptom, but it is one, and it tends to be slightly more prolonged in those that have COVID-19. So it is something that is out there, and it is very true.
And Dr. Calderwood, if you're showing a loss of your sense of smell or of taste, is that something that should trigger a call to your physician?
Yes, and I think there will be an ongoing discussion around whether that is an indication for testing, particularly as we have more tests available. But that is something that we do ask as one of our questions in evaluating people's symptoms.
We have another question about the virus. It's from Lisa. Go ahead, Lisa, with your question, please.
Hi, Dr. Calderwood. Thank you for being here. My question is, I know I've been reading the guidelines about who's most vulnerable and susceptible to this virus, but I'm also reading a lot of articles from medical staff about people who are dying or getting severely ill a lot younger than myself. I'm 45, and that there's kind of they're not sure. There's no rhyme or reason as to why some people are getting it more severely than others, and I wondered if there's any new information around that.
Yes, so thank you for that question. I think the first thing I will say on that is whenever you look at population curves, what we know is that those who are elderly are more likely to get sick. But there are also fewer people who are elderly. And so we will know that people in the middle or even the younger ages around 20, there are more kind of out there in the population. So overall, most of those individuals are becoming sick and getting well without complications. There is definitely a group who is having more severe disease, and trying to understand the predisposing reasons for that, whether it is genetic or something else around something in the environment, is something that's still being studied. What I would say to folks is early on, those who are young kind of said, well, this is not something that's going to hurt me. I don't need to necessarily do all of the things that are being said around social distancing. And I would warn folks that that is not true, and it is sad whenever you see anyone die. It is particularly difficult for families when they're seeing someone so young pass away. And so I would say to those who are young, do not think that you are immune and not at risk, and please do listen to the recommendations around social distancing.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Another way people are listening to this call is online. And so we've got a couple of online questions, and I'd like to take one of those right now. Yahira wonders, is Congress considering a second stimulus package?
Well, I appreciate the question, and the answer is yes. And we've already been at work identifying ways that the first few bills that we passed missed the mark or fell short in terms of addressing the immediate needs of the people of New Hampshire. And also, as time goes on and this crisis unfolds, we're beginning to appreciate all of the contours of it and all of the ways that it impacts our economy and our society. Some of the outstanding issues that I think need to be dealt with include significant funding for the Postal Service. We can't forget that among the essential services that we're all being provided with is daily delivery to our homes, which is valuable in terms of getting us medication and the supplies that we all need to keep our households going forward. So there is a deficit in terms of funding for the Postal Service, and that's one area where we want to see some funding go. In addition to that, Annie and I believe that there should be more money that's going back to states and municipalities. New Hampshire did receive $1.25 billion of flexible funding that New Hampshire can use for its response effort and to supply for our hospitals or for areas of our state that are struggling harder than others. And so we would like to see more money come back to states and also to cities and towns that are bearing significant expense right now and have the ability, to provide that sort of frontline support that we all need at this moment. In addition to that, I think we need to look at how we can support our workforce. We all have to remember that there are really some heroic nurses and doctors and medical professionals and home health care workers and EMTs and first responders that are doing such an amazing job at this point in time, keeping people safe and providing care for the sick. And so we need to make sure that not only do they have the equipment to protect themselves and do their jobs, but that they're being compensated appropriately, and that they have all the support that they need in their roles. So there are a lot of areas, I think, from additional support for our small businesses, for our medical facilities. The longer this goes on, the more we need to look at a second payment to individuals so that they can meet their basic household expenses. So I think that continues to all be on the table, but I would expect in the next couple weeks that we'll see another major push through Congress of a fourth bill. And then beyond that, I think we're already looking at Bill number 5. One of the areas that I've worked on is infrastructure, and I think we need to figure out how we can, longer term, create some jobs and create some economic stimulus that will put people back to work and deal with some of the outstanding priorities this nation has and create the backbone of economic success. So that's also part of the conversation, too. So really, we're looking at everything, and we're open to your ideas and your thoughts as we move forward.
Chris, if I could just add, this is a good opportunity to explain to people how we are working, just as many of you are working from home. Our staffs are all working from home, and Chris and I did go down to Washington to vote on March 27th, but otherwise we've been here in state, and we have frequent conference calls throughout the week working in our committees. I'm on the Health Subcommittee of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, and Chris serves on Veterans Affairs and on the Transportation and Infrastructure. So we have conference calls with our committees as we're putting these bills together. I'm advocating for a number of issues that I've heard from people around the state, home health workers, community health centers, obviously for our hospitals and frontline responders. For our cities and towns, the last bill had a particular funding for cities over 500,000 people, and that did not include any New Hampshire cities and towns. So I want to make sure that our cities and towns and counties get the resources that they need. And so we will be continuing to work. I would anticipate that there will be another round of funding for the small business program just because the interest is so high. And here in New Hampshire, that's a particularly important part of our economy. Our small businesses provide the vast majority of jobs here in New Hampshire. I expect there will be a bill coming as early as this week or next, and we'll continue to do what we need to do to get the funding out to the communities. But thank you for asking that question.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. And next up, we're going to Manchester, and I've got to be honest, I've been wrestling with how to pronounce this name. Emile, is that you? Emile. Hello?
If you're
Caller,
referring to Emily, are you referring to Emily?
if it were spelled correctly, I bet you I would be. Ma'am, you're live on the call. Go right ahead.
Okay, great. I just want to thank everyone. These town halls are really helpful with a lot of information. I do have two questions. One's regarding health for the doctor first. I do have a mother that I'm a caregiver for who is in remission with cancer, and she has some upcoming appointments and follow-ups up at Dartmouth and at Norris Cotton. My question regarding her is, are these appointments as follow-ups available via telehealth?
So sure, I can answer that. There are many facilities around the state that are thinking about what appointments can be done by phone, by video, or need to be done in person. Telehealth has become a wonderful option, particularly for follow-up appointments where a face-to-face appointment, particularly for an exam or studies that are needed on site, are not needed. So I would touch base with a specific clinic and ask about the option for telehealth. It is one that I have used with my patients and have found to be very effective. There are times where, because of coordination of care and studies that need to be done, we still do bring people in. The medical center is open and safe. We are doing visitor screening, patient screening, and staff screening. So anyone coming in is actually having kind of symptoms reviewed and having their temperature taken. And we now are having everyone wear masks. So we've really done a lot to mitigate any risk. But we do know a lot of folks are interested in telehealth opportunities, and they absolutely are available.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Let's go to the web now. This is more of a comment. This comes from Brian. We need the SBA loans delivered now. We're hearing that funds may not be delivered for 90 to 120 days.
Well, I'll say that wouldn't be adequate or the intent of Congress if that ends up being the case. I do agree with the comment and appreciate the frustration that business owners like Brian are experiencing right now. This help can't wait. And that's why, as part of the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program that was part of the CARES Act, we wanted to ensure that there was some upfront money for businesses. So within a few days of signing one of these loans, the goal is to get a $10,000 grant out to these businesses so that they have some upfront cash to deal with very immediate expenses. Now, we've been hearing that those payments have been delayed, but we don't expect it to be delayed more than just a couple of weeks. In addition to that, the Paycheck Protection Program, we've been hearing about some issues, especially from our local lenders who are working with the Small Business Administration and with our local businesses that need help. They've been working round the clock to understand exactly how this program works. Last Friday was the first day, frankly, that any of these Paycheck Protection Program loans were available. And so, SBA has been working hard to get information out, but it's not happening fast enough. So I'm not satisfied either. I share those frustrations, and we've got to continue to push this money out to Main Street as quickly as we can. And in addition to that, as I think Congresswoman Custer mentioned, we need more support for these programs. The $350 billion that was initially in the CARES Act isn't going to do it. And so we're going to look to expand the capacity of those programs. But we do want to hear from you individually. If you're a business owner or are trying to get one of these loans and are having trouble, please contact one of our offices, and we're happy to assist you and continue to work with you on it. One of the things that we're looking for from SBA is an online tool. So much like the tax checks from the IRS, with this online portal, you could track the status of your application, see where exactly it is in the queue, and when you could expect to receive those funds. I think that's going to be an important step coming forward, but we're happy to advocate for you individually or answer any questions you might have.
Dirk, if I could jump in on that, two things. One is Chris is absolutely correct, and we will continue to keep the pressure on to get those funds out as quickly as possible. I know that we have been talking with the community banks. Many of them, their regulations have been relaxed, and they can work with their customers on a forbearance period, I think up to 90 days, where you wouldn't have to make payments on mortgages or loans, business loans or personal loans or lines of credit. But with regard to the Paycheck Protection Program, some companies are using banks where they have a current customer relationship, and they're able to use a line of credit that they can begin spending immediately to cover their payroll, utilities, rent expenses, etc., and that the federal funds, when they come, will be used to pay down that line of credit. So that's another option that might be helpful. We also just heard on the call with Vice President Pence that there will be a guidance that we've been waiting for from the SBA to the community banks on the documentation of the loans, and that is expected this afternoon. And so that I think there had been some question and concern. This program, as Chris mentioned, was launched so quickly since Friday. This is literally day 5, even if you include the weekend, that there was some questions and concerns about the documentation of the loans and how to close the loans quickly. And so hopefully that will speed things up as well.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. Next, we're out to Dover. We got Joe on the line. Joe, go ahead with your question, please.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for taking my question. I guess what I'm really looking at is what are the signs and indicators that are going to let us know that things can go back to normal?
So this is Dr. Calderwood, and I can address that. You know, this is the ongoing question, and I think we're going to have a kind of stepwise approach back to normal. It's not going to be a switch that we throw on and go back to how things were a few months ago. And so we will begin to see loosening of certain restrictions and over time get back to normal. The question out there is, at what period will that play out? And what we're really looking at is this flattening of the curve, and particularly as we begin to see not the flattening of the curve, but the curve actually going back down, to say that we're coming out the other side. There have been a lot of questions about what does this mean for individuals that are in school, and I think the conversation really is that schools will likely be closed through the end of this year, but we'll be back to more or less business as usual by the fall term. There is an open question about what this means for summer camps and how those might be modified, and I think that's an unanswered question at this point. In the next month or so will really tell us more about that. And I think for the summer, you will see restaurants and other areas of the community begin to open up, whether they open up with smaller occupancy at first and then go back to kind of their full occupancy over a period of weeks to months is one thing that's being discussed. I think the big thing for the summer is we are unlikely to have large events, large concerts. It may be that things change more rapidly than we're expecting, but I do think folks are thinking that some of the large summer events may have to be modified.
Doctor, thank you for that very detailed answer. Now, I'm being told that we're coming up to the end of this call, so what I'd like to do is turn it over to Dr. Calderwood, Congressman Pappas, and Congresswoman Custer for closing remarks. So let's go ahead and start with you, Doctor. Can you give us a few parting thoughts?
Sure. No, thank you for the opportunity. You know, this is a scary time. It's a time of uncertainty, and it's true for all of us. We're all going through this together. We need to really be thinking about how we are supporting one another and thinking about how we work together to navigate this period where we get back to normalcy. I think that there are opportunities for us to really understand the impact on not just ourselves, but everyone in the community, and think about what we can do individually or part of larger groups that we are members of to really support one another. What I can say is with each week, some of this uncertainty is becoming less, and we're learning more about what the trend will be, but we're not there yet. I do hope that by mid to late April, we will have a better sense of particularly where things are going in the state of New Hampshire, and we'll be able to have better projections around when we can begin to have these important conversations about a lot of the mitigation strategies and when some of those can loosen up.
Thank you. Congressman Pappas.
Well, thank you very much, and I want to thank all our questioners and those who were on the line today for being so thoughtful, asking great questions, and I want to thank Dr. Calderwood as well as Kevin McKeon for providing some valuable information for us. Information continues to be power for us all so that we can take the appropriate steps to safeguard ourselves and protect those around us. I think we all want to know the answer to that question, when's it going to be safe to return to normal? And I think Dr. Calderwood said it very well when he told us that we're not going to be able to flip a switch and just get back to the way life was before this pandemic. We're going to see something that's very gradual. We're going to have to continue to adapt our behavior, even when it's safe to go out into public, as we would all like to down the road at some point in time, when we return to school, when we return to the workplace. Things are going to look a little bit different for us. And that's why I think we have to continue to think about those long-range strategies that we need to put in place so that we can once and for all beat this virus. That's why a vaccine is so important, why we have provided increased funding for CDC and NIH so that they can do the research that's appropriate on treatments and on a vaccine to get it as quickly as possible to the American people. That's why we need to continue to expand testing, because if we're not identifying this in a rapid fashion, and isolating individuals who are sick, then it's going to be very hard to turn our economy and turn our society back on at some point in time. So those are part of the overall public health strategy that we need to continue to focus on, even as we're so really dialed into what we need to do in the short run in this response effort and in the overall effort to make sure that our families and our businesses and our economy can weather this storm. So we continue to hear you and want to continue to work with you and answer your questions. Please reach out to my office if we can be of any assistance directly to you. We've put up some resources on our House website that answers some frequently asked questions, as well as provides some links to pertinent websites and some of the information that we discussed here on the call. You can find that at pappas.house.gov/COVID-19. You can also call us anytime, 603-285-4300, for any additional information or questions. So we wish you all the best. For those who are celebrating Passover tonight, happy Passover, happy Easter to all those who celebrate on Sunday. And everyone, please stay safe and be well.
Thank you very much, Congressman. Next, Congresswoman Kuster.
Thank you very much, Dirk, and thank you, Congressman Pappas, and certainly Dr. Calderwood for being with us. I wanted to give a special shout out and thank you to Dartmouth Hitchcock and the Dartmouth Medical School for the work that they are doing, both on treatment and on vaccine, and hopefully this research will be productive. Dartmouth has also stepped up to help the state in terms of increasing the number of tests that are being done. And I can report that since that new capacity was brought online March 22nd, that they've run 1,800 tests and that they're available for testing 20 hours every day with a turnaround time of less than 12 hours. So I think, as Congressman Pappas mentioned, this issue of testing is going to be more and more important as we try to get back to our new normal. Until we get to the vaccine in the fall or next winter, we're going to have to come to terms with how we live with COVID-19 virus being in the community, hopefully less than the rate that it is now, but the testing, particularly for our frontline healthcare workers, but also as people go back to work in their own capacity in a more public setting than staying at home, how we're going to keep people safe. One concept is that some of the people that have had the illness are going to have immunity from it, and we may come to rely more and more as those people step up in critical roles. I do want to thank all of the frontline workers. I've got a call this afternoon with the grocers, and I want to thank the people who are working on the front lines with our grocery to make sure that everyone has the food that we need while we're holed up at home. Thank you to the food banks. I think this is critically important. The food banks have been struggling with fewer donations and certainly fewer volunteers. And I know many of you have asked for ways that you can step up to be helpful, and that's one thing that you can do is reach out to your local food bank or to the New Hampshire Food Bank to offer assistance. We had a call with the nonprofits, and In particular, the United Ways have really stepped up, the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation and the New Hampshire Center for Nonprofits. And if you're involved with a nonprofit around the state, please know that you're eligible for the small business SBA loan programs. But we appreciate the work that you're doing on the front lines to help Granite Staters in need as they manage this process. But as Chris said, this is something that we're also hearing wonderful stories of people stepping up and helping neighbors and helping seniors and really doing their best effort. I think we're a very resilient state. We have a lot of people who know each other well and can work together well. And that's coming right from the top. The congressional delegation working with the governor, working with our state and local elected leaders. And it's coming from the grassroots up. We're seeing community groups and neighborhood groups. We've got to figure out how we can stay physically distant but socially connected. And I know for myself and for my family, getting together on a Zoom call with my great nieces and great nephews and trying to stay connected with friends has made a tremendous difference. And I hope that you'll have the opportunity to stay connected yourself. But please don't hesitate to reach out to us, 603-226-1002. Again, I want to commend my staff for just doing a fantastic job, doing a lot of casework, trying to help get people home from overseas, doing legislation, doing outreach to the community, and of course, doing these communications with you. It's a two-way street. We want to stay in touch with you. The best ideas for the legislation come from the experiences that you're having on the ground out in your community. And so don't hesitate to reach out at custer.house.gov. We'll have resources up as well. We do our weekly newsletter if you want to sign up for that. We've got a lot of information coming your way. Just reach out online or 603-226-1002. And again, thanks for taking time to be with us.
Thank you to everyone on the call for making the time to join us for this important telephone town hall. We appreciate the opportunity to answer your questions. We will host more of these events in the future to keep you informed on what Congress is working on, as well as available resources and other important updates on the coronavirus.